What if a war happening nearly 7,000 miles away could quietly increase the amount of money you pay every month just to keep your lights on? Most Americans assume their electricity bill depends on local power plants, local utilities, and the amount of energy they personally use. But in reality, the price of electricity in the United States is tied to a complex global system of fuel markets, energy trade, and international supply chains. That means when conflict breaks out in a major energy producing region of the world, the effects can travel thousands of miles and eventually show up in a place you might never expect: your monthly electricity bill. Hello everyone, I'm Jennifer. Today we're going to explore how a war in the Middle East could actually make electricity more expensive in the United States. We'll walk through the full chain reaction from global oil markets and natural gas prices to power plants, utility companies, and the bills American households receive every month. By the end of this video, you'll understand how events in a distant part of the world can quietly affect one of the most basic costs of everyday life in America. Let's start with the global energy system. The Middle East is one of the most important energy-producing regions in the world. Countries in this region produce a large share of the global oil supply, and they also play a significant role in the production and export of natural gas. One of the most critical locations in this system is the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway connects the Persian Gulf to the open ocean and serves as one of the most important energy shipping routes on the planet. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, roughly 20% of the world's petroleum liquids pass through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That makes it one of the most important choke points in the global energy supply chain. When tensions rise in the region or conflict threatens the security of shipping routes, energy markets react quickly. Traders, energy companies, and governments begin to worry about possible disruptions to supply. Even the risk of disruption can cause prices to rise. Recent reports have shown that escalating tensions involving Iran have pushed global oil prices above $100 per barrel, reflecting fears that conflict could threaten energy infrastructure or shipping routes in the Persian Gulf. But how does a jump in oil prices translate into higher electricity bills in the United States? To answer that question, we need to look at how electricity is actually produced in America. Today, natural gas is the largest single source of electricity generation in the United States. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, natural gas power plants generate roughly 40% of the country's electricity. Coal, nuclear energy, wind, solar, and hydropower all contribute to the grid as well, but natural gas remains the dominant fuel used to produce electricity in many parts of the country. Because of this, the price of natural gas plays a huge role in determining how expensive electricity will be for consumers. When natural gas prices rise, the cost of generating electricity rises as well. Utilities then pass some of those costs on to households and businesses through higher electricity rates. The U.S. Energy Information Administration explains that fuel costs are one of the most important factors affecting electricity prices. When power plants must pay more for fuel, the cost of producing electricity increases. Now here's where the global connection becomes important. Even though the United States produces a large amount of natural gas domestically, energy markets are still influenced by global supply and demand. In recent years, the United States has also become one of the world's largest exporters of liquefied natural gas, often called LNG. American natural gas is shipped to Europe, Asia, and other regions around the world. When energy supplies are disrupted in one part of the world, global demand for alternative sources of fuel increases. That can lead to higher prices in many different markets, including the United States. For example, if conflict in the Middle East threatens oil shipments or damages energy infrastructure, countries around the world may look for other sources of fuel to keep their economies running. This increased demand can push up prices for both oil and natural gas. Energy companies respond to these price signals quickly. If global prices rise, American producers may sell more fuel overseas where prices are higher, which can tighten supply in domestic markets. That tighter supply can push prices higher at home. And because natural gas plays such a large role in electricity generation in the United States, higher natural gas prices can lead directly to higher electricity costs. But the story doesn't stop there. War in major energy regions can also increase transportation and insurance costs for fuel shipments. Oil tankers traveling through conflict zones face higher risks, which leads to higher insurance premiums and security costs. Shipping companies must account for these risks when transporting energy supplies through dangerous regions. These additional costs eventually get built into the price of fuel itself. And as fuel prices rise, electricity generation becomes more expensive. Another important factor is volatility in energy markets. During times of geopolitical conflict, energy prices often become more unpredictable. Traders react to new developments, governments release statements, and markets respond to rumors and potential threats. This volatility can cause rapid price swings. Utility companies must plan for these fluctuations when purchasing fuel for power plants. If they expect higher prices in the future, they may secure fuel supplies at higher rates to avoid potential shortages later. Those higher procurement costs can also contribute to rising electricity prices for consumers. There is also another layer to this story that many people do not realize. Electricity markets in the United States are interconnected across large regions. Power generated in one state can flow into neighboring states through regional transmission networks. These networks help balance supply and demand across large parts of the country. However, they also mean that fuel price changes in one area can influence electricity prices across an entire region. For example, if natural gas prices rise significantly in a major electricity producing region, power plants across multiple states may face higher operating costs. Those costs can affect wholesale electricity markets, which ultimately influence retail electricity rates paid by consumers. In addition, higher energy prices can indirectly increase the cost of maintaining and operating the power grid itself. Utilities rely on fuel-powered vehicles, construction equipment, and transportation networks to maintain power lines, repair infrastructure, and build new energy projects. When fuel costs rise across the economy, many of these operational expenses increase as well. These higher costs can eventually be reflected in electricity rates. There is also a seasonal dimension to consider. Electricity demand tends to spike during extremely hot summers and very cold winters, when air conditioning and heating systems run more frequently. If energy prices are already elevated due to geopolitical tensions, periods of high demand can push electricity costs even higher. In those situations, utilities may need to purchase additional electricity from wholesale markets at elevated prices to meet demand. Those higher costs are often passed through to consumers. We've already seen examples of global conflicts affecting energy prices in the past. During previous geopolitical crises involving major oil-producing regions, energy markets experienced sharp price increases. Those increases eventually influenced gasoline prices, heating costs, and electricity bills in many parts of the world. Energy markets are deeply interconnected, and disruptions in one region can ripple through the entire global system. For American households, electricity is one of the most essential monthly expenses. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, the average American household spends more than $100 per month on electricity. For families living in regions with extreme weather, that number can be significantly higher during peak seasons. Even relatively small increases in electricity rates can add up over the course of a year. A 10% increase in electricity prices might not seem dramatic at first, but over time, it can add hundreds of dollars to annual household energy costs. And when electricity costs rise at the same time as gasoline prices, grocery prices, and housing costs, the combined impact on household budgets can be significant. This is why economists closely watch global energy markets during periods of geopolitical tension. Energy prices influence many aspects of the economy, from transportation and manufacturing to consumer spending and household budgets. When energy becomes more expensive, businesses often face higher operating costs. Some of those costs are absorbed by companies, but many are eventually passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. Electricity is one of the most visible places where these changes can appear. At the same time, it's important to remember that energy markets are constantly evolving. The United States has expanded renewable energy generation in recent years, including wind and solar power. These sources of electricity are less directly affected by global fuel prices. However, because natural gas still plays such a large role in electricity generation, global energy markets continue to influence electricity prices across much of the country. As the energy transition continues and renewable capacity grows, the relationship between global fuel markets and electricity prices may gradually change. But for now, the connection remains strong. So the next time you hear about tensions in major energy-producing regions around the world, it's worth remembering that these events are not as distant as they might seem. Through global energy markets, supply chains, and fuel prices, conflicts thousands of miles away can eventually influence the cost of electricity here in the United States. Understanding these connections helps explain why energy markets react so strongly to geopolitical events and why economists pay close attention to developments in major energy regions. Energy is one of the foundations of modern life. It powers our homes, businesses, transportation systems, and industries. And because energy markets are global, events in one part of the world can have real consequences for households in another. Thank you for watching. I'm Jennifer, and I hope this video helped explain how global events can quietly influence something as simple as the electricity bill you receive each month.